Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final edition of the Peruvian podcast of the year. I totally said that wrong, but I'm not going to correct myself. You know what I meant. So, yeah, we're glad to have you. We have a big cast today, and we're here to recap everything of the Peruvian year that we've done. I like to say this is episode 48, which means we've only missed 4 weeks this year. And not even that, we've probably missed a few more, but we have to do a few emergency pods throughout the week as well. I think one or two, I don't remember. But anyways, that's not the point. Let's introduce everyone. First of all, we have, I guess you can say my lovely sidekick since we ever met, me, Peter. How are you, Peter Crouch?
Yes, doing well. I don't understand this gag because I was never, ever a striker in my youth. I was a goalkeeper. Maybe if I was a striker, then we wouldn't have this number 9 problem with Peru, but that is obviously not the case. So, I guess I'm Peter Crouch for today.
I think after telling pre-pod, after telling how tall you are, all of us can agree you're Peter Crouch. Next up,
I'm not. But anyway.
Next up, your name's even Peter. That's not a coincidence, man. Okay. Well, anyways, next up is Viz. How are you, Viz? Christopher, for those who want his full name, but we just call him Viz here. How are you?
I'm doing great. If Peter was to be your number 9, I see myself kind of like Cholo Sotil, kind of. I can see myself kind of in that role. But yeah, I also play goalkeeper. Interestingly,
Wow.
But so who knows?
Next up, we have a long-time returning guest. Actually, the next two are long-time returning guests. Diego Montalvan, who I believe hasn't been with us since October, if I'm correct. How are you, Diego?
That is correct. I'm good. And now, since we're all talking about our playing, I played in midfield, so I don't know. I played as a 6 or 8, so whoever you want to give me.
Okay.
Okay. And lastly, we have Michelle coming from Australia, from Sydney. How are you, Michelle? Also a long-time returning guest because she's been traveling for a bit, and she's been a bit busy the week she came back, but now we have her back at last.
Yep, I'm good. And if we're talking about positions, I also used to be a goalkeeper, but now I'm a number 7. So, there we go. That's me.
Yep.
Hello.
And of course, she's from Australia. You know the old saying, where women glow and men plunder. So
I'd like to point out no one says that. Thank you very much. Please stop appropriating my culture.
Men at work say it. Men at work say it. So
of course.
Yeah, that classic song.
Just move on here. You're done, Brian.
That classic song that's so good it became a meme at one point. So
it's always a meme.
All good songs have become a meme. Shooting Star, the Rick
Brian,
Astley
just move on, man. Move on. We've got so much to discuss. We don't have time about memes.
We have many leagues and champions and players to talk about.
Okay, well, we don't have that many questions today, so we actually do have time. But I'm not going to go on just for the sake of respect for this lot. So I guess we can start. So let's start with the one that's going to interest the most people, understandably. And I think this is a good spot to start because it's the biggest topic of them all. Let's start with the national team. It's also a topic that all of us are most familiar with because, I think the national team was really a breakout year for them. Well, actually, I'll get more onto what I mean by that later. It's kind of something interesting, but. I'll let you guys, from the scale of 1 to 10, what would you say the national team reached this year? We'll start with you, Michelle.
A scale of 1 to 10 in terms of like their performance, like just everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd give it like a solid 7.
I think that's fair. I would personally. I'll go next. I'll personally give it a 6 or a 7 as well. I mean, the performances weren't bad. It just the results were a bit disappointing. Although this is still an unforgettable year for Peruvian football because we did reach the World Cup. We reached it last year, but we played in it this year. And like I said, the performances weren't bad by any means. It's just that the results didn't really come out. So there were some very memorable moments this year, like the 2-0 win over Australia. Sorry, Michelle. But
I was going for Peru, don't worry.
But otherwise the results were very disappointing. We had a very good start to the year as well. I guess the 2-0 win against Croatia was also memorable. friendly or not, they did reach the World Cup final, so you can't really complain with that.
The win against Chile.
Yep, 3-0.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michelle. And okay, Diego. So what would you say is your rating? What would you give it that?
No, I would agree. I would agree with a 7. The performances I thought in the beginning of the year were great. Even the performances in the World Cup were good. We just couldn't finish. So and then after that, it kind of fell off a little bit. Yeah.
And how about you, Viz?
I think we're being a little generous with ourselves because we all are impartial judges of Peru's playing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm probably the most optimistic of all. I was optimistic till the very next day. I was even under the impression that we could actually maybe tie against France or beat France to go on to the next round. So I'm gonna try to take my Peruvianness off me and say a 6. Which is better than, it's a little bit better than average per se, but for international competition and for being one of the best of the world or whatnot, there was something missing there. Some of the magic was missing, and some of it was out of our control, especially with the whole Paulo Guerrero situation. So the stars aligned, but not all the way through. We still had a pretty decent year.
Yeah, and lastly, let's go to Peter, who has probably been the biggest critic of all of us this year.
Well, I usually like to stay glass half full because Brian's always so negative, but I think in this case, I will say that I'm, and I'm getting called now for whatever reason, but I will say, though, that pretty much all the ratings are correct in that I think Peru gets a solid 7 because if you look at the first half of the year, basically from, well, maybe even go into July, I guess, but from January to July, the performances were very, very solid. Even the games that they lost against Denmark and France, I mean, you look at all the underlying numbers and whatnot. I've written about this at length. They deserve to win the Denmark game. Even if you just watch that game back, you can't say that Peru didn't deserve to win. France, okay, they were a little bit overpowered, understandable, and they never really looked like they were going to score. Australia, you could say they were maybe outplayed, but they were more clinical that day. Go figure. And after that, 1 second.
Awkward.
It happens.
Okay, let's just wait it out.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my grandma was calling me.
Please include that in the SoundCloud version.
Yes, I shall. Anyway, so and again, there's talking. Do they not understand? Anyway,
You're fine.
sorry. But anyway, the overall point is, last half of the season, maybe apart from the Chile game, parts of the U.S. game, they also didn't really they weren't all there. Obviously, players were out of form and whatnot, so I think they suffered as a result. So I think with that being said, a 7, 7.5 is probably the fair grade.
Yeah, I'd say Peter's probably the most level-headed of all of us, and Gage is probably the most generous of all of us because we know how Sport Ancash turned out. So, yeah, he is definitely the most generous. But, I think we should talk more in depth now. We just gave kind of a brief summary to start off. Okay, so I think we should start off with the World Cup. I mean, I guess we kind of asked ourselves earlier this year this question, but I guess we could ask again. This is what a recap is for. So I'll start with Diego here. What do you think the World Cup was satisfying enough? I mean, we got one win. Our first win in 40 years, better than 1982. But we were also very hopeful about getting quite far in this tournament, especially with the unbeaten run, how well we were playing in the qualifiers and the friendlies. Would you be satisfied with the performance, Diego?
With the way we played, I'm satisfied. If we take the results into the performance, then no, I'll say I personally wasn't. I expected to get out of the group stage, and as you all said, and as we all saw, the way that we played against Denmark, we deserved to win that game, and and if we would have been clinical, then things would have been different. So I personally say that that I wasn't 100%.
I guess you're mixed. I guess you're mixed then.
Yeah.
The mixed feelings. All right. I'm a bit the same. I think I have a bit mixed feelings. I remember I was hoping the same thing would happen here. That what happened to Colombia, because it felt like a deja vu to me, because in 2014 I was in high school still, and I was trying to tell everyone that Colombia was a really, really good team and they were going to make it far, and everyone just laughed at me. They said it's not going to happen, and look what happened to me at the quarterfinals. So I was hoping the same thing. Well, I wasn't hoping they would make fun of me for Peru this time, but the same thing kind of happened. They made fun of me before the World Cup. A lot of people talked to on the internet, not high school anymore, obviously. And I said they'll go far. Sadly, the latter didn't go, but some people were they apologized to me after seeing the performances. So it did feel kind of like a deja vu to me. I guess I don't know. It's hard to convince football fans sometimes. Some people are stubborn, but that's not the point. Anyways, I'll go to Peter next. Peter, were you satisfied with this? The same question I asked Diego.
Well, hopefully I don't get interrupted this time. But I am on a podcast, guys. So, I mean, I think Diego's right in that if you just look at the performances themselves, considering Peru hasn't been on that stage, never mind just the country itself, but those players in general, whether it's with their clubs or the country itself, they have not played at that high of a level before. I mean, apart from maybe 2 or 3, you would say. And I think considering that, given all the pressure that was on these players, because just look at how, and rightfully so, look at how excited the entire country was and all the expats living across the world. That had to weigh on their shoulders a lot because they had a lot of pressure. And the fact they were going in unbeaten in so long, and they had the strong finish to the qualifiers. Mentally, I think it took a huge toll on them after losing to Denmark, because statistically, you lose your first game at the World Cup when you only have such a small sample size, you're probably done in all likelihood. But again, I think considering you got what was a very balanced but also a very tough group, also full of experienced teams, France obviously being chief among them, I think they did very, very well. It is interesting, though, that when you look back at Peru's qualifying campaign, and then you look at the World Cup games, and you look at the expected goals that they both scored and allowed, their expected goals allowed during qualifying, they actually outperformed it a lot. They actually should have conceded more goals than they did. Caveat being, though, that in the last, I want to say 5 or 6 games, basically when they went on that huge run, the numbers actually did look a lot better compared to the beginning of the campaign when they were just conceding left, right, and center against Brazil and whatnot. But still, you can kind of see that that's what happens when you face quality teams on the big stage who are so experienced with players who are seasoned, that they will take their chances, as we saw against Denmark, right? And then there will be some games where you maybe don't play so well and you maybe get 1 or 2 chances and you strike both times, just like against Australia. So I think all things considered, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied, especially considering that there was a real likelihood that they probably could have fallen flat on their faces, and I think to their credit, they did not.
Now, back to the original point about the players, I agree. I think this is a really good story, because especially for the likes of Farfán and Guerrero, because they were among some of the best Peruvian players, the Cuatro Fantásticos, of course, of the last 30 years, maybe even more, because they were just outrageous talents. But this is kind of going off the rail just a little bit, but I think Guerrero, Farfán, Vargas, and Pizarro were all. I think they were all world class at one point, even for a very brief moment. Like, for example, I think Vargas was great in his original days in Fiorentina. Farfán was great during his whole time at Schalke. Pizarro, the all-time foreign Bundesliga top scorer, enough said. And I think Guerrero, the problem with him was he peaked a little bit too late for a European team to consider him again. So that's one thing I would say with Guerrero. I think he peaked a little bit too late, because taking Peru to the World Cup almost single-handedly, it's not something a non-world-class player does, I'm afraid. So you can't really rule him out like that. He is very underappreciated, and there shouldn't be an argument there. I would say he's the best player playing at South American club level at the moment. So, but regarding that, I do think the problems arise with not only the players not wanting to play for the team, like Pizarro and Vargas at some points, even Farfán at one point. But yeah, they all peaked at different moments. That's another issue. Vargas near 2011, 2012. Pizarro 2007 and 2010, which was ironically the time when Chimo Solar erased him from the team. And then Farfán and Guerrero peaked literally much the last of them, because he started peaking at 2015, which is around the time that he got removed, these players, called the Fantásticos. So I think that was one of the problems. But that was just a little bit of a thing, a hunch I wanted to get out. I guess we can get back on the rails. I'll ask Michelle next. The same question. Were you satisfied with the World Cup?
Yes and no. Like, it's obviously really cool that they made the World Cup, but at the same time, it's like, you know, there should have been a goal in that Denmark game, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I think that's the hardest part. It's like, that was our moment. And I just think, you know, they played well. I think their best game was definitely, you know, against Australia, where they won. And I think they played a much better game. Like, I know a lot of people were like, oh, Australia played way better, but like, I really don't think they did. I don't think Australia played that great. I think Peru played much better.
I guess we can go to the Australia game in a little bit, because there's actually something interesting about that. But yeah, Australians are generally mixed on that game. I know a few of them who said they were robbed, others Australians who said they did not play well at all. But we'll go to that topic in a second. We have one more person who has to give his thoughts on this question, and that is Mr. Huascaran. So, Liz, what would you say?
Well, not to repeat, but to at least expound some more on what, especially what Diego and Michelle said. If you think about it, I personally think that at least 66% of Peru's World Cup campaign was right, okay? Because going, you know, since the day of the draw, we knew that the strategy for getting out of that group was going to be beat Denmark, or at least tie with Denmark, right? We're probably going to lose against France, and then we can beat Australia. We know that, right? And so we lost against France by very little, almost. I mean, 1-0. It's not like France really ran over us.
No.
We beat Australia, right? And then you have that Denmark game, which is literally just like the butterfly effect, where literally one kick could have changed many other things, right? Even to this day, I wake up crying in the mornings thinking about the fact that Cueva missed that penalty. You know, if Cueva had made that penalty, what would have been different? I mean, I think so much more would have been different. So yes, so I agree. I think that the performance of the players was on point. Things could have been a little bit better. I tried to understand Gareca's logic by having Paulo sit down the first half of that Denmark game. I wish that Paulo had started now. I mean, you know, those little things could have been tweaked, could have been better. But overall, like, hey, we put ourselves back on the world stage for the first time in a generation and a half. So to me, I'm more than happy that hopefully this is just a stepping stone for something even better to come in 2022.
And people notice people notice the way we played.
Yeah, 100%.
People acknowledge it, but there's something interesting I wanted to talk about. Now that Michelle's mentioned it, I guess we'll talk about the Australia game a little bit, because there's an interesting case. Some say we did not play well, and others say we did. I'll go first, I guess, before I let the others talk. It's kind of a weird case, I think, because the first 45 minutes was definitely the worst. But you got to think about the past history of Peru, where it seems that whenever they put the game of their lives, it doesn't go well for them. But whenever they play bad to average, they're very clinical. And we don't notice it because those bad to average games are actually very solid defensive games. And against Denmark and France, those were not really. Mbappe in the France game just ran over us. Denmark, there was a lot of positioning problems, particularly with Miguel Trauco, which led to that Poulsen goal. But in the Australia game, the defense was almost spot on, because Rogic and who's the other guy? It wasn't Cruz. I think it was Jurek. No, just Rogic. Rogic was running the show. But
Rogic and Aaron Mui ran the show that game.
Yeah. Rogic and Aaron Mui, and Santa Maria got everything out of the way, which is all you could really ask from him. So I mean, it wasn't an outstanding game, but he played quite well, and he did what he needed to do. Like, that's all you can really ask of him. So I think that was definitely the difference maker in the Australia game because they did what they need to do. I mean, they were clinical. I mean, they didn't look beautiful compared to the previous 2 games, but at least they were able to get the job done. That's the important thing. And Gareca also made some changes. I mean, Mulo Rodriguez, I don't remember if he was exactly injured or had a knock. I think he did.
He was injured,
Either way, I think Santa Maria would have been the right starting option there. So, what do you guys think of this? I'll let Michelle go first because she's half Australian.
Well, I was born in Australia.
I'm sorry, pure Australian, but with Peruvian.
Oh, jeez. Okay,
let's not get into it.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I went to a pub at like 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the game. Australian life.
Yes.
And
hashtag.
But like, I don't know, for me, it was just really cool to be there to see like the 2 countries like versing each other. But like that atmosphere that we had in the pub was really nice. It was really fun. Like everybody was screaming and everybody was having fun. Obviously the Peru people were a lot louder and a lot more present than the Australians. But like, I think in terms of the game, like, I don't know, it was interesting to watch because obviously like I know a lot about the national team for Australia because that's what I grew up with. And I just think they have a big issue with getting the ball to the final end and then just never being able to convert. So Australia doesn't score a lot of goals. All their goals in the World Cup this year were from penalties. So if Peru could just make sure that they didn't concede a penalty, then they would have won. They did win the game. But like that's probably their main plan is to make sure that they don't concede a penalty because that's the only way Australia got into the World Cup as well. Like there's penalties. That's how we qualified. And so I think that's a big part of, you know, something that they would have obviously been seeing. Like they get a lot of penalties and they score from them and they're good penalties as well. So I think, you know, Peru had really good defense and like you said, it wasn't clean and it wasn't nice. It was messy, but, you know, they got the job done and they kept them out of the box and they kept them, you know, to a 2-0 loss. So,
you know, I don't want to turn this into an Aussie podcast, but I just want to say that Jedinak, if he, you could put him on a rope, go into lava, and then he would still wouldn't lose his cool. So I think that's why he scores so many penalties.
Yeah,
he always keeps his cool. So, but yeah, enough about that. What about you? What about you, Viz? I'll let you go quick again because you've been going last every time this pod. So,
no, I think that well, El Ciego went into the dressing room before the game and let the players know that even though we were eliminated, it was, you know, that the last game always leaves you with that kind of feeling, you know, that taste, you know, like people, you might have lost the other 2 games, but at least you go out of the tournament saying, well, we won. And they really went out there and they proved that, right? And those 2 goals scored, even though in the end they didn't really mean much, meant the world to all of us, you know, meant the world to all of us. So I think that Peru was better than Australia, but instead of like getting lost in the tactical forest, I think I just kind of leave with that in general. That to me was the biggest takeaway from the Australia game.
All right, Diego, what is your opinion on this? And then I guess Peter can go right after with it. You don't have to ask him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, compared to the other 2 games, I would say it was our worst game. The way we played, but as Viz said, I was happy. I was content with seeing my team score in the World Cup. I remember when Paulo Guerrero scored, I screamed, and yeah, I'll stay with that memory of us winning a game in the World Cup and scoring.
All right, and I don't have to say anything.
It's fine. Power of editing, Brian. Anyways, I mean, not much to add. The game was emotional, even though that they were eliminated, as Diego said. I watched the game. I'm sure many of us watched the game with Peruvian relatives and whatnot. I myself watched the game with my father. When Andre Carrillo scored that opening goal, golazo, by the way. there were like tears forming in his eyes, because the last time he saw Peru play was actually when he was my age. He had just been, I believe he was discharged from the Navy for that month because they said, okay, the World Cup is on. You guys get a couple weeks off.
Priorities.
Yes, exactly. Listen, let other countries invade us. We don't care. We're watching the World Cup. And so since then, he's moved to Canada, gotten married, and then had a kid, and now that kid is the same age he was the last time they were there. So it's kind of like a nice coming full circle moment for him. So it was an emotional game for obviously those reasons. For all of us, because it had been so long since we've had a memory like that. The game itself, the more I look back on it, the more I kind of realize, and El Tigre does this to a T all the time, he's a little cunning in that way. I think he wanted the Australia to have the ball to kind of push up and basically allow Peru to counter into all that open space, because look at every counter Peru had in that game, and it was a dangerous chance. And of course, that included the 2 goals. So, and even then, Australia, maybe outside of Tom Rogic, maybe embarrassing a few defenders and whatnot. I mean, he was on fire in that first half. Afterwards, they kind of calmed down. They closed him down, and they just got the ball and immediately launched it forward to Paolo, and he did the rest. And that was the good thing. They didn't have too many chances, clear-cut chances, that is. And when they did, Pedro Gallese was there to make the necessary saves. So, overall, yes, okay. In terms of stylistically and whether Peru controlled the game or not, no, they weren't all there, but I think that was their strategy from the off. And I think when Peru counters like that, it's one of the most beautiful things to watch. They don't always get a chance to do that, especially these days now that they've built their reputation so high. But it was kind of fitting that both their World Cup goals came in that moment, coming off the counterattack and so beautifully as well.
Absolutely. Well, I guess we can end the national team discussion here, because we've been doing for 30 minutes, and this is obviously going to be the longest one. So, I guess we've said everything we need to say. So we can transition with the one question we got. So, Peter, can you read it for us?
Yes, I can. So the only question we did get was from Luis Aguayo, and he asked us, who would you give the 2018 Best Peruvian National Team Player Award to, and why? So I guess this encompasses, maybe let's not put club form into it. Let's just take national team form.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say that as well. I'll go first. I'll go first. For me, it's an easy decision, and it's Luis Advíncula. Because Luis Advíncula really did grow this year. He was the most consistent performer, which for me is the key. Because Carrillo was probably the best player at the World Cup, but after he kind of dropped off form, then there was Guerrero, who really only played 3 games, so you can't really count him. And Gallese was also kind of up and down after the World Cup, so I wouldn't say him. So Advíncula for me was the most consistent. I mean, I know his final games of the year weren't that convincing either, but they were much better than the other players. So I'd say him probably.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with Advíncula? Does anybody have another name that you would throw out there?
I think I'm just going to throw in Flores' name in there, but because he's never been an amazing player. I think he's pretty average, but I think his consistency is something that we should reward, and also his efficiency, his effectiveness at scoring those goals when necessary. And he did it. I think he did it more last year, but he also came in and did it this year in some of those friendlies where, like, really seemed like the team wasn't moving forward. Against the United States, we were 1-0 down. All of a sudden, he comes in and he's able to score that 1-1. Very similar situation against Costa Rica, and then also very, very stable throughout the World Cup. So he wasn't amazing. It's not like he's like in a pedestal or anything, but I think that his efficiency should be mentioned.
Okay.
I would also shout out Pedro Aquino's effectiveness coming off the bench.
Very true. Yeah. Michelle, do you have another name that you throw out there other than those ones, or?
Put me in, coach. No, I think you guys, really summed it up. I think I agree.
And I would agree too. I think Advíncula based on consistency, and I think that's probably the number one criteria. You'd give it to him. But I do like Viz's shout out for Flores. I know his World Cup wasn't necessarily the greatest. I think he was maybe one of those players who I think the mental pressure got to him a little bit, and he wanted to try and do a little too much, if that makes sense. But I think when outside of that, probably one of Peru's most underrated players, and I think he'll always continue to be underrated unless he kind of, well, let's say he has another qualifying campaign like he did in 2017 or in the calendar year of 2017. I think he will always kind of be that unsung hero for Peru in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think Flores. It's kind of hard. I don't think it's a terrible shout. I think his World Cup kind of ruined it for me for a little bit, but like Viz said, you can't really deny his efficiency, which is really all you can ask for. So kind of a tough one. But anyways, let's move on now. Let's go to Peruvians abroad first. Olet, the one we're really going to ask just one question here because we're going to try to fit in these next 15 minutes in. But it's the one question that's really going to define everything. So we're not going to lose much. Olet, so the question is, who was the best and most consistent Peruvian abroad of the year? I'll let Peter, the guru of this, go first.
All these Peruvian roundups are coming in handy now. So I guess we're just talking the calendar year of 2018.
Absolutely.
So if that is the case, it's so tough because certain players had dips and peaks in form. I'm leaning on Vincula again because he's one of the only Peruvians in a top 5 European league, at least ones that isn't over 40 years old. Claudio Pizarro. Credit to him though. I mean, he's in his 40s and playing in the Bundesliga. Kudos to him. But I would probably say him for that reason. I know that kind of the clausura with Lobos was kind of up and down, but when he was on, easily their best, I think, when he played. I would also give a shout out just because of what he did at the beginning of 2018 and then pretty much the entirety of this current season, Christian Benavente as well. He's on a tear in Belgium. I'm a little bit surprised he stuck around, maybe because of the fact that he really only had that purple patch from, say, October-ish until January, and then after that kind of faded. But if he keeps it up, basically this current pace, he's going to outdo what was already a career best season last year, and you would imagine even more clubs are going to be interested in him. So I'll go at Vincula number 1, honorable mention, Christian Benavente, and then if I had to pick like a third place, if we're doing this kind of like a Ballon d'Or type thing, I would probably also throw in. That's true. We have to go 5. I would probably throw in Luis Avram because I think he took us all by surprise about how well he adjusted to Argentina. So I put him in there because he also hasn't put a foot in wrong, and he's probably going to be one of the first players, I think in 2019, to make the move overseas to Europe.
Okay, for me, I'll go next. I'll also do a top 3. For me, the number 1 choice is easy. It's Raul Ruiz. Raul Ruiz was the most consistent player of the entire year. He was doing well in Monarcas at the beginning of the year, although kind of had a slow start to that season. If you remember at the beginning of the year, I kind of criticized him. I was worried that he wasn't going to score as many, but it looked like I was going to get that prediction right. He started off kind of slow, but then he got a lot of goals, and he got back on track. And then with Seattle, Seattle were such an average team this season, but whenever Ruiz came on, he literally carried them by himself. I mean, it had to be him. My only complaint with Ruiz is that he really hasn't shown up for the national team. Otherwise, I'd say he's the Peruvian abroad of the year. This is Peruvians abroad, by the way, not Peruvians of the year. So we're only talking about club level here. Second place, Luis Vincula, because, like Peter said, he's the only one playing in the top 5 European league. Well, Rayo has been kind of up and down from what I've seen. Not bad, but he's been good enough to prove himself in that league, and I think he can get a jump to a bigger club. It happens to all players, especially ones that make a move. If I'm correct, Vincula has never played in Europe. I don't count Bursaspor because he didn't really play for them. So
well, he did play though.
Very few games.
But it still counts. He played in Europe, right?
I mean, it counts, but he's not played consistently in Europe.
There you go. There's the qualifier.
The wording.
Or according to Wikipedia, he played for Barcelona at one point. So I remember seeing a tweet about that, but it's just
that was Ecuador, no?
No, he never played for Barcelona. The white kid.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well,
just okay, I'm not gonna say it, but anyways, yeah, and number 3, I kind of want to throw in Benavente there. but I think I'm from Trauco. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to throw Trauco. Caught you all by storm.
I was ready to jump in and just rip you apart if you had been serious. Oh, man.
No. Number 3 is hard. I think you made some good shots with the Bram and Benavente. I feel like I want to go for something more exotic, but the truth is, the Peruvians abroad haven't been that great this end of the year, with a few exceptions. So I think it's fair to say Benavente or Abram. I'm going to go with Abram just because I feel like I should include. Well, no, let's include as a defender. In that case, I'll add Benavente then, because Benavente has doing really well for Charleroi, which you could argue the Belgian league is better than the Argentina league. And seeing what happened the last few weeks against Alain, I think it's fair to say Belgian league is better.
Well,
because honestly,
you can't paint a league with one brush, though. Like, it's one game. River Plate won Copa Libertadores. They've been one of the most consistent teams in the competition for years. Argentinian clubs regularly do well in the competition. They're some of the wealthiest clubs on the continent. You know,
I honestly, after what happened these past few years, I've lost a lot of faith in South American football. Like, I honestly think Asian football is starting to close in on us. I'm going to be totally honest. I know it's kind of a bold statement.
That's not a hot take, actually. It is getting better.
I was saying earlier today to our friend that the J League is probably better than 80% of the leagues in South America, with only Brazil or Argentina being above it. I mean it when I say that, but yeah, I'm not trying to generalize. I just think the Belgian League is probably a little bit better than the Argentina League, so I'm going to go with Benavente. Okay, what do you think, Michelle?
I think Carrillo, playing in Saudi Arabia, that's, quality work. Nah, all jokes. I think Ruiz, I think he plays really well. I think, I don't watch a lot of the MLS, to be honest. It doesn't really show out here. We just don't have the rights for it. So
you have the carbon copy the A-League, so...
What, the A-League is the same as the MLS? Please.
Oh,
that carbon copy that I prefer over the MLS.
Oh, my God.
I'm getting up in the morning to watch Perth. Okay,
this is not an Aussie podcast. Just move on.
We should just do another podcast where we just talk about the A-League.
Oh,
no, I think he's played really well. I think he did really well for Seattle. Again, I don't really know much. I've just, from what I've seen, through articles and Twitter posts and stuff like that, I think he's just done really well, carried the team. So yeah, I don't have a top 3. Sorry to disappoint.
I'll go with Diego next, actually, because I think Diego is the second proven abroad guru. I mean, no disrespect to Viz, it's just that I'd say Diego's probably the second because he follows more MLS and La Liga than the rest of us do, other than maybe Peter. So I'd say, Diego, what are your top 3?
Yeah, my first 2 are pretty much the same as you guys, Rui Diaz, Advíncula, and then the third, I really was between Abraham and Araujo because I feel like they both have been consistent in Argentina. And like Peter said, I did not expect Abraham to be playing as well as he has. I did not expect Araujo to be playing as well as he has at Talleres either. So because you guys said Abraham, I'm gonna say Araujo.
All right.
I was gonna go with Araujo myself, actually, but I think Abraham had a little more time to prove himself because Araujo played only half a year at Talleres, and even then he's had a few injury problems at the start, so it was kind of tough for me to decide. But I went for Abraham just because he was the one who played for Vélez more time, playing in Argentina more time than Araujo. So that's why I went for. I was close, but no, I go with Abraham. And Abraham is linked with European teams every so often as well. So
all the time.
I hope that they both can be the pairing at some point.
Yes.
I want to see them together.
Yeah.
They did well in the last friendly, even though we lost. Well, no, not the last friendly, but the one before it.
Mm-hmm.
The Ecuador game.
They were the ones. They were the standout players, anyways. Oh wait, no, Ramos was there. I'm sorry, my memory's lost. Okay, well let's go to Viz now.
The third guru.
The third guru. Okay. All right.
That's a bit harsh to me and Michelle. Diego.
Hey man.
Hey, you said it, not me.
I'm gonna give it to Benavente. Honestly, I think that he was in his league the longest, in his team the longest, and he did have some rough spots, but overall, I think that if you try to do 12 months, I think Benavente takes it. Then obviously right after that, Advíncula and his move to La Liga, great news. and also Rui Diaz. Let's face it. I mean, he was only half a year and his current team, and he did wonderful. He did wonderful. And then a little tiny shout out to Polo, in my opinion.
Oh yes,
He was probably. I mean, he did fairly well, but also he was the closest out of all of them, I believe, to winning a title.
Well, Trevor from Fun won a title, but yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But okay, well, second
Polo off, and
yeah,
he got a starting position at Timbers, and he did great.
100%.
So
yeah, it went so well that they actually decided to keep him, which has not happened with any of his clubs yet. I mean, Monarcas had him for a while, and they decided no, he's not good enough, so they shipped him off to Portland, and now Portland wanted to keep him. Inter Milan didn't want him, although that's kind of expected because it was really just different development. And Lau, I guess Lau did want him. No, they didn't want him. I don't know what I'm saying, but he did. What I'm trying to get at is that he did struggle a lot in that Lau attack at some points. He's very inconsistent, so some fans are frustrated with him. But I'd still say Lau wanted him. I mean, it's unfair to say they didn't. So yeah, Portland was really the first club that wanted to keep Polo, and for a good reason.
Then I have been keeping this quiet for a few minutes now. But I don't know if I heard this right. You said that the J League's better than the Argentine League. Please, someone shoot me. Someone shoot me.
I did not
hope
say
you
that.
Didn't say that. I hope you didn't say that.
Can we rewind? Can we rewind? Let's hear it.
Yeah, we'll have to do that in the once we edit it. We'll have to go back and hear that out.
Let's not have him address it because he'll talk about it for like 10 minutes and waste the rest of the podcast.
No, we're done. We're done. Like, no, that's all I was gonna say. If I heard that, I hope you didn't say that. But anyway,
all I said was it's not far off, and I said
no. I'm not gonna have it, Brian. I'm not gonna have it. Not today. Okay.
We're the WhatsApp chat is going to be lit later. I will tell you now.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll be there at 11 p.m. But we have to finish this pod. So I think we've talked about the Peruvians abroad. I think that's a fair assessment. And now we can go to the final bit of the pod, which I think we have 20 minutes. I think this is a fair time to talk about it. The league, which it was probably one of the best leveled seasons, the best standard we've seen in Peru in quite a few years. I mean, some teams were still a bit dodgy, but at least we had that one dominant team that actually looked like they could actually make a challenge in South America. I mean, you have Alianza, who really didn't look all that good, and they got unbelievably lucky this season. I thought last season they had a little more fire in them, and they were fair champions. But this season, if they had won it, they would have been the worst champions in my lifetime. So I think that Alianza is not that team. There was Melgar, who definitely showed that they have a deep squad, but they didn't show their standard for it. And there's Cristal, of course, who did look like a team that could challenge in South America. I'm not talking about titles, by the way. I'm talking about just the regular games, which we haven't seen from a Peruvian side in many, many years. And lastly, the other team I want to mention was Municipal, who were also very up and down, but at times they did look very, very good, especially when Bulos joined. So, what do you all rate the season? I'm going to exclude Michel and Diego from this section just because they didn't get to see much of the Peruvian League this year. I'll ask Michel one question, but I'm going to exclude him for the rest. So, I'll ask Michel first. Michel, what was your experience when we went to that game, the O game? What did you think of it? Why don't you tell us your experience from someone who's never lived in Peru before?
So my first experience of going to a game in Peru, that was a league game, not international. One, the stadium is filthy and disgusting. I just want to put that out there. Did not enjoy those dirty ass seats. But that's also me coming from a very privileged background of going to like beautiful stadiums in Australia where everything is clean and cleaned all the time, every day.
Such a low standard. Clean stadiums. That's what I want to see.
That's what I want in my life. No, but it was cool. Like the atmosphere was amazing. I think for me, it looked like there was a lot of people. I don't know how, I mean, the stadium's big, like it was a big stadium, but it filled out quite nicely. And it was loud, so I think it was good. The game was good as well. Like the performance that the boys played was a good game. They won, so I was happy with that. But yeah, I think that's about it. Really, it was fun. It was a good experience. But I'm also the kind of person who loves being part of active support. So I think for me, like, I would have loved to just be in there jumping, singing along. But that's what I love to do. I just like to jump and sing. So, yeah.
All right. Well, let's ask Viz and Peter a question here. So we did with the rest of we did a similar question with the other two sections. So it's something I just recently addressed, but let's get to it. What would you say the standard is this season to compared to the others? How do you think the standard was? This is an important question because it could go to the Libertadores next season. It could really matter. And speaking of Libertadores, the draw was the other day, but we're not going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about it when more teams reinforce. I think that's a better time to talk about it. So, okay. So, Peter, I'll let you go first.
Ooh, well, I think the quality this year, at least if you compare it to years past, certainly the champion was the best they've had in. I mean, I can't even think of the last time a champion was so dominant, but probably put out. I mean, at the end of one second.
This is brilliant.
We need like waiting music, like elevator music.
I got reamed out by my Peruvian father, so you all know how that's like. So, anyways, back to my original point. The champion itself was actually quite dominant. 5 o 10 minutos. Anyway, the champion was very dominant in years past. And if you look at the rest of the league, I think the group of contenders, it was very balanced, right? Because you could make the argument, Alianza on paper could do well. Melgar on paper looks very strong. And certainly in the second half of the season, you could argue along with Cristal, the other favorite to win the league. Garcilaso, I think based on all the coaching changes they made, they really messed up their season in that way. Obviously, we're not looking ahead to the draw here, but just in general, based on how it looks, and depending on how Cristal replaces the outgoing Mario Salas, if Herrera and Merlot leave, and how they replace them, could possibly even be in-house because they got a few talented youngsters who could replace them. Then I think, honestly, it's been a decent quality year, I think, especially in the top half of the table. Lau have been very active in the offseason as well, so maybe next year that could help. But in terms of competing in South America, depending on what happens, they should at least put up, you would hope, a better showing than what they have in a couple of the previous seasons. Hard to do worse, mind you. But the draws have been slightly favorable, which helps. And the fact that you had such a dominant team like Cristal, I think it pretty much lies with them at this point.
Yeah. And Red Garcilaso have been doing a few reinforcing of their own. They started off really well with Donat Millan, and they kind of slipped the average with players like Willy Pretel, which I'm probably never going to play for Red Garcilaso ever, but they made a big announcement of it. It's like, Willy Pretel, great signing, and he's probably never going to play. But then there's Hector Tapia, who I do not rate as a coach at all, and I don't think any Colo-Colo fan or Chilean rates. But maybe here he's different. Let's hope he is, but I'm not too excited about this managerial signing, to be honest. And lastly, there's Danilo Carando, who didn't really do well in Ecuador, but I think the pace in Ecuador is totally different from the Peruvian league. That's why players like Emmanuel Herrera have not done well, but they have done well in Peru and Chile. I'm not convinced it's all the quality of the league, also the pacing of it. And Danilo Carando is kind of a slow player anyway, so he doesn't go with the Ecuadorian style. But I agree with you, Peter. I think Cristal haven't done any reinforcing yet. They're kind of having a championship hangover at the moment, which makes sense. And Cristal never make many signings anyways. They make 2 or 3 signings a season and usually rely on a few others, promoted players. So, it's I hope Cristal reinforce a few players if they want to get to the if they want to get past the group stages, which they do have quite a favorable group for first time in many years. The Peruvian, that's quite a favorable group. So hopefully they take advantage of this. I think the only threat in that group is Godoy Cruz, in my opinion. So, and Viz, what do you think of the standard of this season?
I think I have a very similar opinion to what Peter said. I think I do enjoy when the league, there's 2 or 3 teams that are competing. I mean, honestly, I don't know who like watches the Bundesliga anymore. Like for reals, I don't know. Maybe the style is great. Maybe the soccer is great. But honestly, every time like Bayern gets like 15 points ahead, it's like who cares anymore?
Wrong year to say that, Viz. Wrong year to say that.
No, this is all the leagues in Europe. I would say this year are kind of different. But
except for Italy.
Anyways, except for Italy, which is usually the other way around. Anyways. Any other exceptions to my
example, Peter? City's going to win it again.
All of them are the same.
Except for Germany.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, continue.
Right.
Yes.
But anyways, then again, you see the gap between Cristal and the other 2 teams. They really could at the end of the year there. They basically took their foot off the gas and even started putting it on the brake. Like honestly, they just really slowed down because they were so far ahead of everyone. At least in that respect, I would have wished that they would have been declared champions like five games before the league even ended because I mean they were so ahead of everyone, right? And still they had to go through the little playoffs and everything and beat Alianza and become national champions. So I mean, I guess I'm kind of just complaining of the format of the tournament. It made for somewhat of an interesting tournament, but then again, it didn't really reward the strongest team like it should have. Right in the end, justice was done, and Cristal became champion. Anyways, if you look from the top 3 down, everybody was pretty much well off, like well leveled. Even Universitario was able to kind of find strength out of nowhere and make a comeback, even though they looked like they were going to be going to the 2nd division. And Sport Rosario really helped them there, honestly. I mean, that was La U's miracle was their fans, number 1, but number 2 was Sport Rosario. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that all the teams, I think when you have something that's pretty well leveled off like that, everybody would score, and everybody ended up with like in the 50s to like low 60s point wise in the aggregate table. And so I think it makes for an interesting league, makes for a competitive league. And let's just hope that these teams, plan ahead and have good campaigns in next year's international competitions. I mean, especially like if Binacional is able to take it to Puno, right? Take Independiente to Puno. I think that would be hilarious, first of all. And then for the teams in Libertadores, the 2 teams in the group stages, I think we haven't seen a better setup since 2013, where Cristal was 1 point away from reaching the round of 16, and Real Garcilaso actually went all the way to the quarterfinals. So yeah, so let's hope, let's be optimistic. I'll be optimistic as I usually am, and hope for something good.
Yep, and there's one last thing we need to cover. It's the quadrangular. We're going to cover it very briefly. This is not going to be a complete recap. Well, kind of. You'll see why in a second. But we're not going to talk about the Segunda División because we already did that last podcast, so we don't have to do it again. We're going to talk about the quadrangular here. The quadrangular, the reason I say it's kind of a recap is because we're all very disappointed in Cienciano. I mean, good on Alianza Universidad to want to go. I think they can actually have a decent campaign in Primera, much better than other Copa Peru team that got promoted that should name whose name shall not be mentioned. But Alianza Universidad de Huánuco have already started off well. They sent Robinson Aponza, and I think he actually will get playing time this time, unlike Sport Rosario. But I
don't want to hear that name ever again.
Well, you're going to be hearing it a lot next season, just a warning. But I'm a bit disappointed in Cienciano. But Alianza Universidad did brilliantly because no one had faith in them, and they didn't lose a single game. So you can't really blame them. They did what they need to do. So Manucci was definitely my favorite to go up in that quadrangular no matter what, and they got the job done. This is Renzo Sheput's second promotion in a row. So you can call him the promotion expert, even though he doesn't really play that much for any of his teams. But anyways, it was an interesting one. I'm glad Manucci is back. It was long overdue for them. So I would have been a bit sad if they didn't go up, even though I wanted Cienciano to do it. I wanted Cienciano and Manucci to do it better said, but I would prefer Manucci over Cienciano just because of how long overdue it's been and how their fans are so passionate you could see the city of Trujillo celebrating in a few videos, which you don't see that with any Peruvian team, except maybe Cienciano, ironically. But yeah, I don't see that with La U, Alianza, Cristal. Like they do it in their own districts, maybe, but they don't do it in the whole city, which makes sense. I mean, Lima is a huge city, but either way, it's. I feel like Trujillo is like the one city that does do it. That's very passionate. I wouldn't say they're the most passionate fans of all Peru. Some of the most obscure provinces like Apurimac, well, not obscure, I don't want to be rude, but like Apurimac, Huancavelica, they are very passionate fans, but they have never had a team. So I'm not really counting them just because of that. And some of the jungle regions as well. So Viz, what do you think of these on the Peru team? I know you're very disappointed that Cienciano's not going up.
I am very disappointed. I'm also kind of mad at the fact that Alianza Universidad basically cheated the system, really, because 2 years ago they were playing in the Segunda División, right, and they were having average campaigns at best, finishing always between the 10th and 5th place, never really breaking that barrier up, and so they all of a sudden decide to just, you know what, like we don't want to play in the second division anymore. We're going to relegate ourselves to the Copa Peru, right, and then try to work our way up again. And because the Copa Peru allows you to go from the third division back to the first, I mean, like they really played the system, but to their credit, they played it well. They played it really well. You know, they knew that they had two teams that were stronger than them, right? Their goalie, Alianza Universidad's goalie, is 44 years old. Okay, that guy's been playing since like the late 80s, and still they managed draws against Cienciano and against Carlos Manucci, and then they just beat Santos, who everybody else was beating, and that was it. That was more than plenty to get him back in the first division. Cienciano, I think we're just going to have a pretty good campaign next year. I'm expecting them to do well, especially when the competition has kind of died down with Vallejo out, Manucci out. They will still have to face one out each. They will still have to face Alianza Atletico. So we'll see how they do. But I'm sure that they're going to come back. You know, Boys was in the Segunda División 5 years, before they return, and Cienciano isn't quite there yet. So I'm sure that they will have another chance next year. But other than that, we do have to admit that from within the 20,000 teams that participate in the Copa Peru, there is a select group, some 10 to 15 teams that do have the level. They have the professionalism that would allow them to play in the second division, and that was proven during the promotion playoffs, that someone like Alianza Universidad or Santos can try to really fight against second division teams, which are fully professional, and get somewhere.
Now, before I let Peter talk as the last talker of the podcast, I did want to say something on the Segunda, which I used to defend the fact that Copa Peru teams I used to forget that Copa Peru teams let teams go up automatically. I used to defend that to Primera. I no longer defend that because one, Bolívar se pirata, and two, the second reason is because of this. The teams cheat in the system. And the funniest thing is, I actually don't think that the Copa Peru is easier to go up than the Segunda, because the Segunda División, you have a few advantages. First of all, if you lose one game in the Copa Peru, you're finished. There's nothing you can do. You're basically out. So you lose one game in the Copa Peru, you're finished. And the Segunda División, you can lose 4 or 5 games max, I'd say. And then in the Segunda, you can sign foreigners, which is also a plus. In the Copa Peru, it has to be all Peruvians, and they're not professional anyway, so you're not going to get a ton of good players who want to join your club anyways. And the last reason is simply because the Segunda División they don't have good pitches, but they have much better pitches in the Copa Peru, I would say. So that's my 3 reasons. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it kind of ruins the Segunda División in a way, because no one wants to play there. Everyone wants to play the Copa Peru, which doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, if you go up to Segunda, just accept it. Like, don't resign from it. That's why I don't think the Copa Peru should really let teams go into Primera. It's not because of any other reason. I just think it ruins the Segunda, and that's a problem for me. It basically kills the whole pyramid. So I'll let Peter go on this quadrangular, and then we can end the pod.
I mean, not much to add. It was disappointing Cienciano didn't go up. It would have been nice to see 2 inter-city rivalries again in the Primera. Obviously, Cienciano is a traditional club, so seeing them back up would have been great. They're obviously the only Peruvian club to win a continental competition, so there's history there and all that. And I think they would have been a nice addition too. But listen, credit to Alianza Universidad for getting promoted, for being able to beat them out. I think there was a little bit of complacency at the beginning from the Segunda teams, which I think kind of hurt them. Obviously, Manucci ended up getting the job done, and kudos to them. And obviously, we will now be seeing more of, to those who maybe weren't around for this, before Pedro Aquino left Peru for Mexico, Brian was on the Pedro Aquino hype train. Like, that was basically his whole persona. You are now going to be seeing that on steroids with Pedro Diaz when he comes up with Manucci in 2019, because that is going to be an overdrive. So just get ready for a lot more Pedro Diaz tweets and mentions from Brian on the podcast and on Twitter.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Peter. Now, before I end the pod, I just want to correct myself a little bit before I look like a fool. Advíncula has played in Europe. He has played in Germany and Portugal. So,
which is what we said, man. Exactly what we said at the time.
I got a message to a friend on Facebook, and he literally just said that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like Michael Owen, like genuinely, or Brenton Speed or something. I don't know. Always making mistakes.
What about your J League to?
Yeah, you want to apologize? Let's apologize. Last part of the year, please apologize.
That's an opinion, and I'm not going to apologize. Anyways,
Argentinian Peruvians are going to be so turned off right now. It's not even going to be funny. I actually have an Argentinian Peruvian cousins. I'm going to tell them about this.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Okay, well, let's end this final year of the pod. We are now going on holidays. Well, most of us are anyways, but yeah, this might not be the final podcast of the year. Just the final podcast is the main series, because we might still do a special pod if we're feeling it. But more than likely, we're not going to see us until next year again. So yeah, that's going to be the final podcast of the main series for this year. And let's all sign off. So my name is Brian. You can follow me at B_Bertie98. Make sure you drop us a like on YouTube, because we are getting some troll. I know it's one person who's literally disliking all our videos on 4 different accounts. I know it's that, because it's not a coincidence that they all came.
Listen, man, it's fine. Just like the video
fire.
on YouTube. Just
Let's
like it on YouTube.
fire.
It helps us. It helps us boost the
Like
profile
it
of the show.
everywhere.
Boom.
Like
Yes.
it everywhere.
Like us
Yeah,
everywhere.
That like button.
There you go.
What is your Twitter?
I am VIZ_FC.
Diego, how about you?
At D Montalvan, and have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year's to all of you.
How about you, Michelle?
I'm at Michelle A. Morris. Have a Merry
Peter?
Christmas.
Yes, and I am at Galindo PW. You can follow the show at Peru Waltz and subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. Like us on YouTube, as Brian mentioned. And yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody, Happy New Year, and hopefully we will see you soon in 2019.
Many exciting tournaments in 2019.
Yes.
All right, so Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Happy whatever you want to call it. So
Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa, there you go.
That's the one I was forgetting. So
Festivus.
Happy festivals. Happy festivals, I guess you could say, for all religions. So yeah, let's end the podcast here, and you will see us next year. So this is the Peruvian Waltz team, and we are signing off for the last time in 2018.